Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Civivi Knives, or Kiv, or something along those lines. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank Civivi for sending these guys along. Reached out to me, said, hey Nick, what are you interested in of our latest products? I mentioned this one because it is a little weird, right? But nonetheless, I told him as always, I am talking about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk, and send them my full disclaimer on my website. They did still send it along. We do have to assume, though, this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I am doing my best to make sure that doesn't affect the nature or quality of my review. Next thing, size comparison. What we're going to find here is this guy is small. We'll start off actually comparing it against a ruler, and we will see that this guy is coming in just over 1.5 inches, at least as I am measuring it here, although given that's also depending on the ruler hitting a certain point here, right around 1.5 inches, but I would argue that if the cop doesn't like you, this is over 1.5 inches, or just around the 4 centimeter mark. So that's what the overall blade length is, and the length of the thing overall is just about 4 inches. But here is against something a little more conventional, that is, of course, the Spyderco Delica. Did I really just argue that this pocket knife is more conventional than a ruler for measurement? Well, I have issues, people. We know that. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. And, of course, the most conventional unit of measurement always the Spyderco PM2. So what we see here is this is freaking small. In fact, this knife entirely fits within the handle of the PM2 fully deployed, and that's... it's not big. So anyways, there is that. Next thing, what the heck is a Civivi? Well, Civivi, of course, is the budget knife brand of Knives. And who the heck made this guy? Well, this is an Ostap Hel design. Right there, that's right. Oh, hell yes, it is. This is an Ostap Hel design. Ostap is a person who you should be familiar with in the knife community. He's done a number of other things out there in the world, including, but not limited to, I believe... just confirm it. Yeah, the Real Steel Metamorph is probably one of his best-known pieces out there in the world. And so you can actually see some similarity in the overall approach here, but just it's a pretty well-known designer. And then finally, this is a folding Kiridashi-style knife. That is sort of the name of this kind of thing. It's usually done as a fixed blade, but little sort of fragment of steel. And this is a non-locking knife. This does not have a lock. It just has a set of detents. You can watch this assembly and get a better sense of how that works. But anyways, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very... frankly, weird little knife. So the good side to start with, this thing is tiny. And I'm going to argue that's going to be good in a number of situations. I mean, one of those reasons is just the ability to store and stash this guy is very high. Right? You could fit this guy easily within an Altoids tin or something like that if that was something that was interesting to you. I know that's a thing some folks do. This fits very easily in the coin pocket of your jeans, or what is it, the fifth pocket, the little one that's above the pocket. This goes in really, really well there. This is relatively, it's a little bit on the thicker side relative to some. You know, we're a little thicker than the Delica here, but it disappears on your person, which is a beautiful thing. It is also a very, very high lunchroom acceptability factor, despite the fact that it's all black and angular, which... really? This is going to be a knife that you can pull out to open up a thing of salad or whatever you'd like, and no one's really going to look at you askance for it. And so that actually is a very nice thing, and it is also legally going to be interesting being under that 4 centimeter line. I think that's going to be interesting for a lot of folks. Next thing, this is a pretty lightweight knife. Go ahead, toss this down on the table, and what we're going to see is this comes in at 1.44 ounces, which is under an ounce per inch, basically, which is great. And it's just a tiny little knife anyway, so that can be a very nice thing. It is also fully ambidextrous because, well, the tab is just, the knife is symmetrical, basically, and the clip can be moved to either side, which is a nice thing for about 10% of my viewership there. I do have the intuition that the clip might not fit as well on the other side because it doesn't have that milled out pocket, but you know what, whatever, not a huge deal. It is a fully ambi knife for all intents and purposes. Next thing, this does have some nice details for you. Some of those details include things like this little area here, which I would argue is a pretty good cutout for a pinch style grip. If I want to come in here and pinch in this way, this works really well. It gives you a little extra traction. It is also giving you a little bit of rounding on the G10. It's not just flat slabby G10. You can see there's this area here, which have been kind of chamfered chamfered down, as well as this little back bit. And then one thing that I really do appreciate is that the clip here, although we'll talk a lot about the clip later on, the clip has no screws in that area, which means that although this clip is still very, very short, meaning there's very little room for your pocket in there, it's not going to be held up on the pocket material as readily. So there are nice details. It's very clear that this is a designed knife, that Ostap Hel has earned every bit of his reputation in the knife community, and, that shows. Next thing, price on this guy is relatively inexpensive. We're looking at $45 here. Now, look, I mean, certainly you can buy a lot of knife for $45, but at the same time, that's a price that I think for most collectors, you can do without too much in the way of savings, right? I feel like that's something that allows you to experiment on something like this. Even if this isn't necessarily the thing that you know you're going to love, it's something you can try, and it's something you could have around as a nice little second knife, so to speak. That's one of the biggest advantages I think this is going to have for people who want to carry something that's a little bit big and scary, like, I don't know, the Cricket Ritual, and then have something in their pocket as well that isn't going to send, Irma in the lunchroom, jumping under the tables, that kind of thing. So that's a nice thing. I like this price on this guy. Next thing, the opening action on this guy is very reliable. I said opening, by the way, I meant it. But opening-wise, you can, unless I slip off the damn tab, that one was on me, but you can very easily get this guy open. That's really not been something I've ever struggled with in practice. Closing it is unfortunately not as fluid as, for instance, this is the MBK EWC, Monterey Bay Knives, and this guy has a very reliable close as well as open action, and so as a result, this guy will always get towards close. This guy, unfortunately, doing that, you kind of end up having to try and work your way around it. It's a whole affair. So it's not as much of a closer, as nice of a closer, that is, as this guy is. Sorry, the EZC is. EWC. Anyways, there's that. Next thing, blade on this guy is fine. The steel on this guy is 9CR 30, 9CR something or another. It's 9CR is what it is. It's written on there, 9CR 18 MOV. 9CR is a steel that I have actually grown to appreciate a little bit. It's a solid budget steel, right? Is it, oh my God, super steel? No, absolutely not. But for a budget price, you know what? I got no problem with it. It's fine. It's in that kind of good-to-go, budgety sort of thing. So, and this is, by the way, something that I've changed my opinion on, is I've spent more time with the steel, right? It's much better than 8CR, but that doesn't take much either. I mean, it is ground very thin, which we all know that geometry is more important than chemistry, generally speaking, for a good blade. And so this comes down to a very nice thin edge, which I appreciate. It is also, by the way, a very flat edge. I can put this guy against a ruler, and there is just a tiny, tiny little bit of belly from sharpening. But as a result, this guy becomes very easy to sharpen on, like a flat bench stone or something like that, which is always a nice thing. Next thing, I appreciate very much this little region right here. So what we see here is not only do we have a little bit of extra jimping down here, but this is an unsharpened area of the knife. This is an unsharpened area of the knife. And more importantly, as I'm gripping the knife, as I'm using the knife, what that means is that even if, because this is not a locking knife, remember, if I give any kind of pressure, the backside here, the knife just wants to close. There is no lock, there is no anything like that. But what this does means is that if I'm using it and that pressure starts to occur, it's going to actually stop. It's going to sit against my finger, and that unsharpened area is going to be pressing into my finger rather than the blade. And so holding this guy, this is not unsafe at all. And this is the best way to do a double detent slip joint, is to have that unsharpened area here, such that even if it starts to unlock, it's not going to cause any danger. This is something a lot of folks have gotten wrong doing those double detent slippies, and it's nice to see it done well here. And then finally, on the good side, this is weird. It's unusual, right? I got this out of the box, and my initial thought is, wow, this is dumb, but it's dumb in a cool way. It's unique, it's different, it's strange. And you know what? I think my opinion still holds there. It's unusual. It's not going to be something that's for everybody, but I think it could be for somebody. And the fact is, we, Civivi generally, is a company that has a tendency at its worst to make sort of very same knives over and over again. This is very different. And so I really do applaud them stepping out of their comfort zone and doing something unusual, doing something weird, doing something strange. I would much rather see unusual, even if it's not going to be the same, the greatest thing for everybody, and it beats their normal kind of just spamming us with very similar models approach. So to me, all that is the good, is that this is weird and unusual, and I like that. It has a nice safety margin with this unsharpened area here. The blade on it is nice. It's got a pretty reliable opening action. The price is low enough to allow people to experiment and pick one of these guys up. It's got some nice details showing it's got a good designer. It's full fully ambidextrous, it is super lightweight, and it is very tiny with a high lunchroom acceptability factor. On the great side to me, though, is not actually for myself, right? This is a knife that is going to jive very well with a number of laws that are enacted around the world, right? There are a number of people who are very, very scared of pocket knives for some reason, and they've decided to codify those things into law, and so you end up with stupid regulations that say, oh, well, the knife can't lock. Well, this knife doesn't lock. Or the knife, the blade must be under 4 centimeters or something like that, and this is pretty plausibly there, right? This does open with one hand pretty reliably, and so that does some subset of laws, and of course you're going to want to talk to your lawyer, not a YouTuber, about these kinds of questions, but this is a very, very good knife for dealing with stupid legal constraints, for people who genuinely believe that the knife is less sharp somehow because it doesn't lock, right? It's a dumb thing, but this is a good thing for dealing with those dumb things, and as a result, there are going to be a group of people out there in the world for whom this becomes instantly more compelling because a lot of the other options are not legal, right? Because you can't carry something that is small and locking, right? Or you can't carry something that is, a longer non-locking knife, or you can't. There are a billion different reasons why this could be legal in a place and something else isn't. And so I really do like seeing Civivi addressing that market a little bit. That's a great thing, and it offers something new for people who often don't get new releases. So to me, that's what's great, is that this really adapts well to strong legal constraints, as well as, by the way, just the interpersonal ones, right? This is something that is inoffensive in the lunchroom. And of course, you get the people in the comments, I don't worry about the people in the lunchroom. Yeah, I bet HR has a file on you. Let's just be real about that. Anyways, I digress. Different people have different lives and workplaces, and for some, just having a non-threatening blade with them to use for utility kind of things could be very, very important. It's important to remember that not everybody's life is the same as yours. Anyways, so to me, that's what's great. On the bad side, start with, this is a weird, funky little knife. Why did we do this in high-speed, low-drag, all black, right? Who is tactically operating in the freaking theater using this pocket knife? Freaking nobody. So do it in colors. Make it something that's going to be even less offensive to Irma, right? I don't get it, right? It's a little weird, and doing it in this all-black thing is just like, why? And considering this is meant to be a second knife, I think doing it in funky color schemes, trying some micarta. Civivi's got a lot more creativity than this, but I don't know why they went with all black as their first run of this. Next thing, I don't actually care for this style of blade where the cutting edge is sloped away from your hand. For me, it's very awkward because let's say I want to cut into a hard surface. What it requires you to do, it's kind of hard to show this off on camera, but the angle you have to be at with your wrist turns into something very weird, and you can't really have your finger up here because that's going to make the blade want to shut. So instead, you have to have your thumb down like this, and you're torquing your wrist in weird ways. I just don't care for it, right? I would much rather have a blade, even at this kind of a size, that sticks out much more in line with my hand. So I don't really care for the Kiridashi style thing. It just makes my wrist go into strange positions, and I could definitely do without that. I get why they kind of had to do it at some level. The way that this is structured, having that blade allows it to clear these standoffs, but not the way I'd have gone. But anyways, so there is that. Next thing, the closing action on this guy is not quite as nice, because you can kind of get it popped loose. Here, I'm going to try my damnedest here to actually close this guy one-handed. I'll put a lot of force on it. So the problem is, okay, now I've got it here, but I don't have enough reach to really, do the rest of it. I can kind of catch my finger on the back side of that and do that, and I imagine I would probably get better at it, given enough time, but it's just sort of really awkward. And see, if I get in this position, I have to reach back up around and do that again. And this is a knife that, coming on to the last of my bad things, this is a knife that is just a little too small for manipulation generally. I have relatively small hands, a little smaller than most, I would say, and even I only have a 2-finger grip on this, and that's taking advantage of this unsharpened area, right? This guy really does not give you a lot of room. And handling it, using it, that kind of thing, it is very small. And you can, by the way, do the close if you really pull it in and kind of wrap your finger around like that. It works out, but that's a little weird. Maybe bigger hands would actually be better with that for some reason. Anyways, I digress. But it is a little fiddly, honestly. This is at the size where it's like I don't feel entirely great manipulating it. It feels like it's going to slip out of my hand, right? It ended up feeling very strange, and very often I would open it with one hand, but I just decide, you know what, it's easier to just do the two-hander. That's not a terrible thing, but it is something to keep in mind. Maybe, actually, I'm starting to think, just even during, okay, in that case, I had my finger in the wrong position there. which again points to an inexperience issue. But I feel like if I had bigger hands, this might actually work a little bit better in terms of the closing mechanism. But still, it's weird. And by the way, that was another thing. If you're trying to do that, push it this way, the problem is the heel of this blade is going to be kind of coming up and locking down in your finger here. It's just very fiddly. Unfortunately, there were a number of knives. Like I said, the EWC is just a lot better for that. And I think part of that is just the strength of detent coming back the other way, as well as the increased prominence of this, meaning that you always have something to push on, relative to this guy where there are areas where the tip actually disappears, right, where it's hard to get in there. So anyways, it's just a little too small for very straightforward manipulation for me. So that to me, that's the bad, is it's a little small. Closing action ain't as nice. I don't care for the backslope Kiradashi style blade. And the funky color schemes would have been a great opportunity here, but instead they went high speed, low drag for some damn reason. On the ugly front, to me, the ugliest part about this knife, and the thing that made it kind of a pain in the neck to carry, is the clip. This clip is tiny. Like, seriously, if we look at this and we measure, we have about 2 millimeters of space underneath there. And the thing is, and the ramp on it, by the way, is also very, very, the ramp on this is like less than 1/8 of an inch tall. As a result, this is a pain in the neck to get into your pants. It is very, very likely to get, kind of hung up in the fabric, and if you've got a split seam on the top there, this is very, very small. And unfortunately, with the clip being very shallow, it really stays in the pants because you have to kind of cram the pants into there, right? They don't natively fit. And then trying to remove it from there is awkward too, because, okay, if I've got my... probably shouldn't have another brand's microfiber cloth, but whatever. I can force my pants down onto this. There we go. Great. But now it's in here. If I wanted to try and grab this thing out of my pocket, my first instinct is going to be to do this, right? But now the problem is that I'm pinching the clip down, which is even further holding it inside the pants, right? It's really not going to want to come out that way. My second instinct might be to reach my index finger back around and pull out from the bottom. So that way I'm not engaging the clip. But the problem is when I push on the bottom of it, it opens the blade. And that's not really ideal, right? And so what I ended up kind of settling on doing is trying to reach in, you kind of shift the knife this way, and then grab from both sides and then pull. That gives me the best approach, but honestly, this clip is just way too shallow, right? And I get ergonomically why they went there, but it's just not a big enough clip to really deal with if you're wearing yoga pants all the time, this is going to be great, but it's awkward. Getting this guy into and out of the pants was not straightforward. Again, there were probably tricks, and if I carried this guy for 6 months, I might get better at it, but honestly, I wouldn't want to carry it for 6 months because that's a pain in the neck, right? This is just not a great clipping experience. So to me, at least, that's what's ugly here, is this clip was kind of a mess in daily use. Final conclusion, this is kind of an odd one. I mean, in a variety of different ways, but it's odd to review too, because at one level, I really do appreciate the uniqueness on this guy. It is not something that you see every day. And I am way, way, way in favor of Civivi doing things that are weird and different relative to doing the same damn thing over and over and over and over and over again. That's a beautiful thing. And so I like that. And having a small size, a lightweight build, full ambi nature, some nice details, a decent price, reliable opening, nice blade, some margin of safety at the bottom. That's huge, right? These double detent flippers are a menace without that, at least in my estimation. I don't feel secure using them otherwise. You get a unique design, and I think it's a very well-suited knife for a lot of legal constraints. I would like to see more variety in color. Like I said, see, I just got myself in the place where I can't reliably get this guy closed again without re-gripping. Anyways, I digress. I don't love the blade shape. The closing is a little odd. Like I just said. The shape's a little small for me, and the clip isn't really good unless you're wearing the yoga pants. In practice, though, I also have to remind myself that there aren't that many great options in this kind of area, right? One of them is the Spyderco McBee. I don't have one of those handy, but at the same time, it is a knife that is a little bit thicker and a little bit bigger and much more expensive, but it is very, very nice, and it's really well designed. It's also locking, which is going to take that off the table legally for a bunch of people. You've also got the Monterey Bay Knives EWC. If you're looking for a flipping slip joint sort of affair, this is in many ways a much more satisfying one, right? I think it just works better as a daily pocket knife just because, well, the design is great and things like that, but at the same time, it is substantially bigger. So you might have legal constraints in terms of length that is going to mean that something that's, 3 inches, 7.5 centimeters, going to be a little too much for you, right? You've got the UKPK from Spyderco and other similar slip joints in that vein that are generally, they're very ergonomic. They're great, but they are also bigger, right? And then you've got these kinds of things that are very short little blades. This is the Spyderco Man Bug, which... LOL. But it's also going to be a little bit longer here, and it is a locking knife that is one-hand openable. So you do keep that in mind. You know, there were a bunch of options, but really not all that much. And so at some level, like I said, I applaud Civivi for going off the beaten path. I applaud them for trying something that's a little bit new, a little bit different, and is going to serve a market that isn't being served very well by the mainstream community, right? I'd rather have 10 of these than one more hotel artwork, well, it's another knife, sort of thing out of that, and so that's great. That said, I feel like this does need some tweaks. I think the current form of this is really not something I would want as my only pocket knife. And that's mostly because of the clip, but also I think they could do some revision on this top little bit here as well to make the closing a little easier. But right now, this was kind of a pain in the neck to carry, right? I mean, once it's in the pocket, it's great, but getting it in and out was not great. Getting it open is fine, but getting it closed, not so much. I just didn't care for it very much, right? On days where this was my one knife, I honestly wasn't super thrilled about it, but I carried it that way because otherwise I'd just use the other thing in my pocket. I think it's got some very strong potential, right? You could very easily get this guy into a shape where it is, great, where there's not a problem at all, but right now, I don't think it's there yet. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have a role. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be people for whom this is great. If you need something that's small and non-locking, for instance, for work regulations, or for legal reasons, this could be really great. It becomes a much bigger fish in a much smaller pond, and as a result, it could be much more interesting for people. Or maybe you're just in love with the design for some reason. Maybe there's something that's bringing you joy here. So I can see there being people who, for reasons of legal constraint, for reasons of I guess emotional constraint, if Irma's diving under tables, if you pull out a Delica, I don't know, that's an emotional-based constraint, right? Fear constraint, whatever. I can see it having a role for somebody, but I wouldn't recommend this as your main pocket knife, right? This is a backup, or this is a piece that you are forced to use because, well, nothing else is working super well for you. So anyways, there you go. I hope I hope that makes sense for you, that I haven't, Oh, Civivi is really hard to make into a pun. That you're not in the hospital and requiring the use of a Civivi at the moment. Get it? IV? No? You're going to give this a like and a thumbs up down below. Oh, yeah, we're good there. All right. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. God, coming up with puns for this knife was absolute hell. Get it? Ostap Hel? No? Okay. Hope this has been interesting. Have a good one. Bye now.